Hello, and welcome back to the Crime Reel. For today's true crime narration, we shall be visiting Baker Street in London, England, the scene of one of the most notorious bank robberies of the 20th century. Our story starts with Robert Rowland, who was in his flat in Wimpole Street, London, on a seemingly normal September Saturday evening in 1971. Robert was an amateur radio enthusiast who was trying to tune into the popular radio station Radio Luxembourg at around 11 p.m. when he came across something unusual. He heard something which made him think that a local cigarette shop was being burgled. He was correct. A local burglary was occurring, but more than cigarettes were being taken. Robert called the police at around 11:30 p.m. but was dismissed as it was assumed he was making a prank call. The officer jokingly said to record the conversation if anything else of significance was said. Robert continued to listen and, using his cassette recorder, recorded dialogue of four people arguing, then agreeing to continue with what they were doing. A male voice said, "We have done 90% of the easy ones and now face the hard ones." Robert rang Scotland Yard at 2 a.m, believing he had enough evidence to prove that something illegal was happening. Scotland Yard sent the Flying Squad, a branch of the Serious and Organised Crime Command, to investigate. The Flying Squad confirmed that in their professional opinion, a burglary was taking place. This burglary had been more than a year in planning. The year before, in 1970, a 38-year-old photographer by the name of Anthony Gavin was inspired by a Sherlock Holmes story in which a gang tunnelled into a bank vault. Anthony was an ex-army physical trainer who was physically strong and intimidating. Anthony decided that the Baker Street branch of Lloyds Bank would be his target, and the bank had gained a reputation for being a location where many of London's most wealthy and powerful would conduct their business. Anthony asked his friend Reginald Samuel Tucker, a 37-year-old second-hand car salesman, to undertake surveillance on the bank. Reginald, who had no criminal record, opened an account at the bank in December 1970. He signed up using his real name and placed £500 in the account. In February 1971, he rented a safety deposit box in the branch, again using his real name. Before the night of the burglary, he had visited the box on 13 separate occasions. Each time he visited his safety deposit box, he was taking measurements of the room using his arm span and an umbrella. The bank's policy ensured that clients were left alone when visiting their box. Reginald's measurements were made easier by the repetitive pattern of the 9-inch square floor tiles. He gradually drew a map of the room, including the location of the cabinets and the furniture. Anthony also recruited Thomas Gray Stevens, another second-hand car salesman. Thomas did not have a criminal record and was easily and unsuspiciously able to obtain a thermal lance and a 100-ton jack through his work. Both of these items were needed for the break-in. The rest of the gang consisted of Bobby Mills, who was hired to be the lookout, and Mickey "Skinny" Gervais, who was a burglar alarm expert. The gang also included an explosives expert and two others, referred to as Little Legs and TH. It is rumoured that TH had links to one of the most corrupt Scotland Yard officers of the 1950s to 70s, Alec Heist. In May 1971, Benjamin Wolfe, a 64-year-old contact of Anthony's, bought the lease for 189 Baker Street for £10,000. That's the equivalent of around £125,000 today. The property housed a store called Le Sac, which sold leather goods and was 2 doors away from the bank. It had a basement which was at the same level as the bank vault. In between Le Sac and the bank was a restaurant called the Chicken Inn. On the evening of Friday, 27th of August 1971, Anthony and his crew began digging. They proceeded to dig every weekend until the 10th of September. Due to the loud noises that they were creating, they could only dig at weekends. The front windows at Le Sac were painted white and a sign was put up stating that the store was closed for refurbishment. Any noises heard would be dismissed as refurbishment works. The digging was so strenuous that Anthony apparently lost nearly 30 pounds in weight during the process. At the same time as the digging, roadworks were being completed nearby. These roadworks kept triggering alarms in the vault, so the bank temporarily disabled these alarms. The gang were made aware of this by a contact at the security company. The tunnel started with a 15-inch hole in Lasac's basement, which was so small it could be concealed with a few shoeboxes. The gang then tunnelled under Chicken Inn's basement. By the time they reached the bank vault, the tunnel was around 40 feet long and over 8 tons of rubble and waste had been removed. Experts have later described the tunnel as a magnificent piece of engineering. The gang created a wide hideout under the vault. It was big enough to stand in. On the evening of Friday 10th of September, the gang tried to break through into the vault. They made 2 unsuccessful attempts, firstly using a jack and then a thermal lance, with the latter creating a vast level of toxic fumes in the tunnel. The smell was so strong that one of the gang members expressed his concerns that it would lead to someone checking the vault. The gang eventually used gelignite to blast their way into the vault through the 3-foot concrete floor. The sound of the blast was concealed by the sound of the Saturday morning traffic. The explosives expert managed to blast a hole in the floor without setting off any of the vault's remaining security alarms that had not been turned off because of the roadworks. It is unclear how many members of the group were present for the actual burglary. The lookout, Bobby Mills, was on a nearby rooftop with a view of the bank's entrance. When Robert Rowland began listening and recording their conversations, at least 3 different male voices and a female voice could be heard. It is likely that these 4 people were within the vault. At around midnight on the evening of Saturday the 11th, the group had a disagreement about whether or not to continue working that night. This was picked up on Robert's recording. One of the men in the vault wanted to take a break due to the level of toxic fumes within the vault, but Bobby, the lookout, did not want them to stop. The female and one of the males determined that they should continue and the argument stopped. Robert described this male voice as having a lot of authority and he believed that this was the gang leader. Soon after, the group inside the vault updated Bobby that they had forced open 90% of the easy safety deposit boxes but still had to work on the more difficult ones. The members in the vault agreed to stop working and returned at 8:30 a.m. on Sunday the 12th of September to finish the last of the job. Bobby remained on lookout all night. The gang believed that they would be finished by early afternoon. Robert and the police officers who remained with him throughout the night heard all of this but were unable to determine where the robbery was taking place. A waiter from the Chicken Inn restaurant heard noises coming from the bank on the morning of the 12th. He looked through the window but could not see anything out of the ordinary. Bobby reported this to the gang and clearly rattled. The final broadcast was heard soon after. It was, "Would you like to change to the other channel? Over." It was assumed that this was the code for leaving the bank. The police decided to search within an 8-mile radius. This area included 750 banks. This is despite Robert suggesting that due to his radio technology, the gang were most likely within 1 mile or a maximum of 2 miles of Wimpole Street. Robert was right. Also, despite Bobby being heard mentioning a waiter from the restaurant next door and the fact that few restaurants were open at this time on a Sunday, the police failed to use this information to narrow their search. There are many rumours circulating as to why the police were so haphazard in their search for the burglary. The main one being that some of the police officers were bought off by the gang. The police response was also hindered by needing to have explicit permission from bank owners to search their properties. The police arrived at Lloyd's Bank at 3:30 p.m. on September the 12th. They found the vault locked and everything looking normal. Due to a time lock, they were unable to enter the vault. They left the bank despite knowing that the gang had tunnelled their way in from underneath, so it makes sense that everything would appear normal from outside of the vault. Police later suspected that the gang were in the vault at this time, but had been warned by Bobby to keep quiet. When the vault was eventually opened on Monday morning, it was found that the gang had emptied 268 safety deposit boxes. This was around a quarter of the total number in the vault. They had not entered the bank's safe, However, it is unclear as to whether this was ever part of the plan. The gang had escaped through a rear window in Le Sac in order to avoid drawing attention to themselves. Estimates of the value of what the gang stole have varied significantly from source to source. The court case suggested a minimum of £1.5 million was stolen, and some sources suggest that it could be as much as £4 million. Due to the contents of safety deposit boxes being confidential, it is unlikely that we will ever know the exact figure, but in terms of today's value, this could be anywhere between around £18 million and £57 million. It is further suggested that the gang wrote a message across the wall which read, "Let's see how Sherlock Holmes solves this one." Additional theories emerged about the crime due to a temporary D notice being issued by the government. This limited the press on what information they could publish. This was possibly to avoid letting the gang know that their conversations had been overheard by the police, but some believe that this was due to there being compromising pictures of Princess Margaret with actor and criminal John Bindon stolen from the vault. However, no evidence has ever been found of this. No other bank burglary in British history has ever had a restriction placed on the press in this way. Over 120 detectives worked on the case, with over 800 pieces of evidence being logged, including the walkie-talkies that the gang used to communicate. The police searched for 8 men and a woman who they believed was the controller of the group. They worked on the theory that the woman may have been in a different location to both the gang and the lookout during the burglary. As Benjamin Wolfe signed the lease on Le Sac in his own name, the police were able to make a list of suspects. This included Benjamin, Anthony, Thomas and Reginald. The police investigation was hampered by the need to ensure the safety of the tunnel before they could enter and search for evidence. By the end of October 1971, surveillance teams saw Reginald hand a bag of money to Abdullah Hassan Ganji and his nephew Akbar Muhammad Ali Ganji. Abdullah and Akbar were both arrested and the police seized £32,000 in cash. In the following 2 days, Benjamin, Anthony, Thomas and Reginald were all arrested. The police recovered an additional £231,000 of stolen money. The remaining cash and stolen items have never been recovered. The police considered charging Robert under the Wireless Telegraphy Act of 1967 for listening to unlicensed transmissions, but eventually they decided against this. Lloyds Bank sent him £2,500 to reward him for his work. The trial of the 4 arrested gang members and the Ganges began on January 2nd, 1973. The 4 gang members were charged with breaking into the bank, stealing a minimum value of £1.5 million and for possessing explosives. The 2 Ganges were charged with possession of stolen goods. Anthony, Thomas and Reginald pleaded guilty to the charges. Benjamin and the Ganges pleaded not guilty. The Ganges claimed that they were a courier for a Swiss-based finance house that was purchasing the British sterling. Benjamin claimed that after he signed the lease, he only returned to the store once to pick up the post, and he was shocked when he heard about the break-in. On 26th of January 1973, the verdicts were announced. The Ganges were found not guilty. All 4 gang members were found guilty. Anthony, Thomas and Reginald each received 12-year prison sentences, and Benjamin received 8 years due to him being in his 60s at the time. Although many members of the gang had no previous criminal history, none of them traded additional information for a lighter sentence, possibly indicating that many more experienced and possibly violent criminals were involved. Many of the owners of the safety deposit boxes sued Lloyds Bank for their losses, and in 1977 the case was opened. The plaintiffs had a chance to walk around a room filled with tables displaying some of the recovered items and put a claim on what was theirs. They were allowed to do this unsupervised, and many commented on how easy it would have been to take the items. One customer complained that there was a diamond ring in a bin, and there were cases of multiple people putting a claim on the same item. The trial against the bank lasted 4 days before it was adjourned. The judge gave no reason why. Some suspect a man by the name of Brian Reeder was one of the unidentified male voices. He was recently convicted for his part in the Hatton Garden safe deposit burglary that took place in 2015. This involved the burglars drilling their way into the vault in a similar way to how the gang entered the vault during the Baker Street burglary. However, any link to the 1971 burglary has never been proven. There have been multiple rumours surrounding this case, especially in regards to the contents of the vault. It is understood that obscene pictures of a Conservative cabinet minister were left by the gang so the police could find them and open an investigation. In 2008, an unidentified member of the gang confirmed to a British newspaper that they had found these pictures and were still waiting for the police to take action. It's also believed that this minister is now dead. It has also been rumoured, but not proven, that a corrupt police officer received a substantial amount of money as part of a payout from the group. Some claim that whilst the burglars made off with large sums of money, the majority of which has never been recovered, far more sinister crimes were actually uncovered by the gang during the course of the robbery. They had stumbled across something much bigger than themselves. After their release from prison, the gang had never been heard from again. This burglary has become the focus of many documentaries and a feature film called The Bank Job. The 2008 feature film helped to fuel the flame of the Princess Margaret rumours and even suggested that this was a plan by MI5 to retrieve the pictures. However, there is a severe lack of evidence for these claims. That concludes today's story on the Baker Street heist. Be sure to tell me your thoughts in the comments and your opinions on whether you believe any of the conspiracies. And now it's time for petty crime. First up, we're over to Chicago, where there's a petty crime gang. Whilst owned by Misa Love, this gang is fully controlled by Babareo the Pug, kindly assisted by Flash and Luna. Good job to the Chicago petty crimers. Beautiful dogs. Thanks for sending them in, Mr. Love. Next up, this has been sent in by American Amy. It's Amy's mum's cat. It's that laid back and that cool. It has no name because Amy forgot to tell me. Seems a very chilled and content cat. So that's great. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for sending them in, Amy. Finally, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Renee Catagnas. Hi, Renee. Renee was so enthusiastic last week. She turned up 12 hours early for the launch of a video and then asked me where it was. Oh, we had a laugh, Renee, didn't we? Anyway, hope you made it on the right time, right place today. Thanks for your support again. Thanks to everyone as well for all your support. I really do appreciate it. Thanks very much for listening to The Crime Reel. Stay safe. Goodbye. Psst. Have you noticed a lot of the gangsters and criminals, they have really cool nicknames for one another? So my question today, if you were a gangster, what would your name be? If you are a gangster, what is your name? Thanks everyone. Goodbye.